I told them on Van Zant Road, there was a weed eater there.
489 Van Zant Road. Units on scene can serve search warrant.
And they went to the wrong address, is what that was.
A little over a year ago, an army of small-town cops went outside their jurisdiction, showed up at the wrong address for a midnight raid over a stolen Weedeater that belonged to a local politician. They busted into an innocent man's home in the middle of the night, shooting and killing 63-year-old Doug Harless, a man loved by his community. As you may know from my first video on this from back on January 3rd of last year, the cops were refusing to release any information on what happened. They claimed they had a warrant, but they still have not released it even a year later.
Under the express authority of the KSP, they have asked us not to say anything regarding this investigation.
They claimed that the Kentucky State Police were investigating, though they've basically said nothing even now a year later. As it turns out, now we know why. This morning, it was announced that the cops involved in the shooting death of Doug Harless were cleared of criminal charges. Apparently, a special prosecutor convened a grand jury on Monday of this week in secret on a holiday when the courthouse was supposed to be closed, and then got the grand jury to decline to file any criminal charges against all of the officers involved. And then, of course, they waited until today, Friday, a slow news day, to announce it to you. Oh, and you're gonna love this. As it turns out, escaping accountability is a specialty of this special prosecutor. You're not gonna believe what I found out about him. The death of Doug Harless is one of the most outrageous and unacceptable civil rights violations that I have ever covered. Yet most people around the country haven't even heard about it. You can help change that. Recently, the FBI obtained private doorbell camera footage that was not supposed to exist via their partnership with big tech. If you're not already aware that your government watches your every move on every online connected device that you use, well, now you know. And it's not just the government, but also corporations and criminals. Hell, they're even spying on our dogs now. That's why I recommend that you get yourself a good VPN to protect your digital privacy ASAP. For instance, the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN. If you connect to an insecure website that doesn't have HTTPS encryption, or if you use sketchy public Wi-Fi, with a VPN, your online activity is protected. Third parties like your internet service provider or the government can't snoop on your online activities. A VPN also masks your IP address so that your virtual location stays private. When you use my link, you'll get a huge discount on a 2-year plan plus 4 additional bonus months. Get it at nordvpn.com/civil. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/civil, or click the link in the description below. And this video actually has a fitting sponsor because this case is a great illustration that your government will both spy on you when they're not supposed to, and then also claim to know nothing about you when they screw up and go to the wrong house and shoot an innocent person. Minutes before midnight on December 23rd, 2024, the London Police Department arrived at the home of Doug Harless, which was not located within the town of London, Kentucky, but rather in the county, Laurel County, Kentucky. Specifically, Doug's address was 511 Van Zant Road, which was clearly marked on the outside of Doug's home. Supposedly, this small army of small-town police officers was there armed with a search warrant to search for a stolen Weedeater. The only problem was the Weedeater warrant apparently did not authorize them to search Doug's home, 511 Van Zant Road.
489 Van Zant Road. Units on scene can serve search warrant.
But rather 489 Van Zant Road, a different house across the street.
I told them on Van Zant Road, there was a weed eater there.
489 Van Zant Road. Units on scene can serve search warrant.
And they went to the wrong address, is what that was.
A neighbor's surveillance footage shows the cops arriving to Mr. Harless's home at 511 Van Zant Road. It was dark. They knocked on the door. They spread out in the guy's yard. They all got into position. And next thing you know, 5 shots are fired. Mr. Harless is dead. Doug Harless, a law-abiding 63-year-old man loved by his community, like most of us in Kentucky or West Virginia, are gun owners prepared to defend ourselves and our homes from intruders in the middle of the night. And like most of us, he was not expecting intruders at midnight on December 23rd, 2024. Certainly not a small army of police officers from the nearby town of London, Kentucky, looking for a Weedeater. Doug Harless was a longtime resident of Laurel County, Kentucky, residing at 511 Van Zant Road for many years. He was a father, a grandfather, and he was loved in his community. He had worked for many years as a blue-collar maintenance man for a local real estate company. Co-workers and neighbors remember him as friendly, helpful, a music lover, a fan of NASCAR. He had no criminal record and, most importantly, no connection whatsoever to the reason police officers showed up at his home shortly before midnight on December 23rd, 2024. On the morning of that same day, December 23rd, a steel Weedeater was reported stolen from the garage of a property owned by the Laurel County Judge Executive David Westerfield, which now I gather is Kentucky's weird name for basically the mayor of a county. Not a judge, but more of a mayor type person. Hobart Buttery, age 49, was arrested in Manchester, Kentucky later that same day, and he admitted to taking the Weedeater. He allegedly told officers that he had planned to take that stolen Weedeater to a house in Lilly, Kentucky, a rural part of Laurel County, and that's where Doug's home is. Dispatch audio before and after the incident all referenced 489 Van Zant Road.
489 Van Zant Road. Units on scene can serve search warrant
as the location in Lilly where the search warrant was being executed, presumably the location tied to the theft of the Weedeater. Dispatch audio indicates officers had at least 5 confirmations of the correct address, 489 Van Zant Road, from dispatchers before they arrived at the scene.
489 Van Zant Road. 489 Van Zant Road.
Van Zant Road, stand by in the area, shots fired.
Where they go?
We're at 49 Van Zant Road, serving a search warrant.
But despite this, the London police officers showed up at a different residence. Doug Harless's home is clearly marked at 511 Van Zant Road, while 489 Van Zant Road is across the street. Doug's house number was visible on the front of his home, and yet the officers ignored it and proceeded anyways. Apparently, 489 Van Zant Road was unoccupied at the time of this incident. And it wasn't Hobart Buttery's residence either. Buttery had previously lived in an entirely different house, also on Van Zant Road. It's important to note that Hobart Buttery was already in custody before LPD officers went to Van Zant Road to execute their alleged search warrant. They haven't explained why, despite having the suspect already in custody, they rushed to the scene in the middle of the night to search for a Weedeater, busting in the door, guns drawn. Buttery eventually entered a guilty plea to the theft charge related to the Weedeater, and he's reportedly still incarcerated. The answer as to why the London Police Department executed a SWAT-style midnight raid looking for a stolen Weedeater when their suspect was already in custody, according to Hobart Buttery, has to do with the identity of the person who owned the property where that theft occurred. The Weedeater was reportedly stolen from the garage of a property owned by the Laurel County Judge Executive David Westerfield.
Last Sunday night, there was items stolen from my property. What was stolen did not belong to me. It belonged to a person that was using my garage to store his equipment in. And I was out of town when this happened. I knew nothing more than that about it.
A few days after my first video that I did on the Harless shooting, a private phone call was leaked.
I really don't want to do that because I might do something unethical.
It was a call recorded on dispatch audio between a London police officer and Mr. Westerfield. That phone call likely explains why these officers were acting so aggressively over a mere Weedeater theft that wasn't even located within their city limits, because it belonged to a powerful county politician who appears to have been calling in a favor.
Hey, David, what you doing, old buddy? The boy was shot and killed, right? Yeah, I understand. No, they called me at 1 o'clock this morning and told me all about it. Well, I hope we've done our job pretty good for you there. We got pretty quick on it with that butcher voice. You know, he's facing 10 years, and I'll see if I can't make that stick. I'm going to push you. You guys just do your job, and if you need me, you call me. Absolutely, Judge. You too, and you have a good Christmas too, sir.
So the actual search warrant that allegedly existed has never been publicly released, and the local courthouse reportedly has no record of ever receiving it, despite it being state law that search warrants are to be filed with the court once they are executed. As I speculated in a prior video, I think the reason for this is because if it exists, it would incriminate them. But without releasing the warrant affidavit, the public remains in the dark while the cover-up is completed. And here's what they did. They asked the Kentucky State Police to investigate. The Kentucky State Police then allegedly investigated the incident without a shred of transparency, telling the public nothing. They gave their report to a special prosecutor, and then this week, the special prosecutor finalized the cover-up. Matthew Leverage is the Commonwealth's attorney for Kentucky's Wayne and Russell counties. He was appointed by the Kentucky Attorney General's office as special prosecutor to review the KSP investigation into the shooting death of Doug Harless, and then to decide whether any criminal charges should be brought. By the way, this was done because the local prosecutor, Jackie Steele, couldn't bring himself, apparently, to even potentially prosecute a police officer within his jurisdiction, and he recused himself, which is a common beginning to many stories of police cover-ups across the country. They bring in a prosecutor from the outside who is a special prosecutor, in other words, totally unaccountable to the citizens of that county where the incident actually occurred, and then that person gets to make whatever decision he or she wants to make with complete impunity, and there's really nothing that the actual local community who lives there can do about it because he's not their prosecutor. They can't throw him out of office. They can't just not re-elect them. They can do nothing, which is probably why the actual local prosecutor didn't want to do it, because he's either got to participate in the cover-up and clear the cops, or the community is going to throw him out. So then that's exactly what he does. With zero transparency, he convenes a grand jury this week, and we have no idea what he presented to them or what he asked of them. But whatever he did show to them, whatever he did ask of them, the end result we know now was that they cleared all of the officers involved in the death of Doug Harless from any and all criminal wrongdoing. So he was supposed to make the decision about criminal charges, but yet he does not tell the public what his decision was, just what the decision of some anonymous secret grand jury was. He's too much of a coward to even tell the public that this was his decision. He's too much of a coward to share the Kentucky State Police findings or conclusions with the public. So still no release of the alleged search warrant that would almost certainly contain incriminating information. No release of the KSP investigation report, no nothing. So now they just get to hide behind, well, that's what the grand jury decided. And the public does not get to know a damn thing. By the way, this is the same guy, Special Prosecutor Matthew Leverage, who had an article about him in the ABA Journal in 2022 with this headline. This is a real headline. And I kid you not, this is it. Prosecutor seeking judgeship says he has moved on since impregnating defendant. That was a real headline. I'll link that article in the description below if you want to read the details, but essentially it goes like this. Leverage had prosecuted a woman for drug trafficking in 2011, after which she was given a 5-year pretrial diversion agreement, meaning that she could avoid prison if she follows certain rules. Apparently, one of those rules must have been being Prosecutor Leverage's side chick, because eventually the prosecutor filed a motion to revoke her diversion agreement, send her to prison. This was apparently done after she ended a secret affair with Leverage and revealed to Leverage's wife that she was pregnant with her husband's baby. Leverage also reportedly had an affair with a dismissed juror in 2013. Leverage said he thought the woman's jury duty was over, although she was called to serve on another panel after her dismissal. You know, perhaps someone should check on this particular grand jury. According to the article, Leverage was never disciplined or charged for either of the incidents, so he's highly experienced already at evading accountability to the public, while I have no doubt having no qualms at all about throwing members of the public in prison and holding us accountable. At its heart, this is a story about a lack of accountability. Only in government service is this possible. We, the people, are almost always held accountable at work, in our communities, in the criminal justice system. But government officials can abuse the trust that we place in them in order to protect themselves and their friends. They can avoid responsibility for their screw-ups, and that's basically what they did here. They got overly aggressive looking for a weed eater, even though they already had the suspect in custody, just because they wanted to perform a service for a local politician. They were so reckless and ignorant that they didn't even bother to confirm the address that they were about to raid. Then, once they realized that they had screwed up and entered the wrong home, killing an innocent person, they chose the path of a cover-up, rather than doing the right thing. Meanwhile, they've kept the public in the dark, even now, a year later, in the dark until after they clear themselves, with this anonymous grand jury where we have no idea what was even presented to them or asked of them. I'm sure the grand jurors were presented with just the shooting itself. The question of whether it was reasonable for police officers to fire on somebody who is armed with a firearm and about to shoot them. But that's not the big problem here. The big problem is that the police officers never should have been in Doug Harless's home in the first place. How did that happen? The mayor has been claiming for over a year now that he just has no idea how that happened.
I don't think anyone here fails to support the police. I think what happened and what has everyone so upset is that this looks like and feels like that it's indicative of some type of systemic failure where people are going rogue a little bit.
Why is the city police patrolling and serving warrants in the county?
I mean, I could see if it was somebody hurting somebody or, fighting or something like that, but not over a weed eater.
Under the express, authority of the KSP, they have asked us not to say anything regarding this investigation. It is an open investigation. That is the only reason we have not made any statements regarding this, because, again, they're investigating it. It's not that we're trying to cover up. It's not that we are trying not to be transparent. Again, when the findings are done with the KSP, I can assure you that anything that the findings are, if there's any wrongdoing, accountability will be there.
I think in a whole, everybody's wanting answers to what happened that night. Internally, we're stepped away from this, and I'm not even asking the officers and them a lot of questions because, again, it's an open investigation, and I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to interfere with anything. I believe they know how to do their jobs, and I believe that, that until somebody shows me differently, that they executed it the way that it should have been done. I don't have the information to do anything. You know what I'm saying? I just don't. And I don't believe that we should live in a society that we convict someone and then rule judgment and store them away in a jail cell or fire them without having all the facts. Because what if the facts come out that they did nothing wrong that night? I want every document, every piece of item, I want it somewhere on the website. I want it somewhere people can look at this and see it themselves. Whether it makes us look bad or it vindicates us. Either way, it needs to be put out there for the public.
Bullshit. It was their search warrant. Show the search warrant. Show the search warrant so that we can see if it's even a legal warrant that could have lawfully been executed in the middle of the night in the first place. Show us the warrant so that we can see if there was a no-knock authorization. Show us the warrant so that we can see what the address is that's listed on the warrant, what the photograph shows on the warrant of the house to be searched, what the description is of the home to be searched on the warrant. Go ahead, show it to us. The Constitution requires that before police officers execute a warrant at a home, that they have to undertake a reasonable effort to ascertain and identify the place intended to be searched. The 1987 Supreme Court case of Maryland versus Garrison holds that police officers are constitutionally required not to enter a residence when they are put on notice of the risk that they might lack authorization to enter and search it. Here, without seeing the search warrant, we have no way to know what efforts officers undertook and what efforts they didn't bother with in order to ascertain the correct address that they were looking to search. And this is why I think that they are hiding the warrant from you. But we do know that the officers should have been on notice that they were at the wrong house. It said right there on the front of the house that it was 511 Van Zant Road, not 489. Moreover, the officers should have known that they shouldn't have been entering any house anyways at midnight in that manner over some politician's stolen Weedeater. They shouldn't have been doing that in the first place, especially where the suspect who stole it was already in their custody. They violated the Constitution, they violated their oath, and Doug Harless paid the price. I said at the beginning that you could help stop them from sweeping all of this under the rug. This cover-up has only been successful so far because despite the egregious facts here, this really has not made national news, but it should. You can help by making sure that everyone that you know learns about what happened to Doug Harless and that the authorities in Kentucky are trying to cover it up, from the Kentucky State Police all the way down to the London Police Department. They're hiding the truth, they're hiding behind a special prosecutor, they're playing dumb, yet the truth is obvious. A lawsuit was filed, but I'm worried here that the family chose the wrong lawyers. This is the first time that I've ever reached out to attorneys for information, where they've just straight up ignored multiple emails and phone calls. Yet they'll give Zoom interviews with the local TV news. Additionally, they filed their lawsuit in state court, so basically in the very courthouse where everyone works who needs to be held accountable. It should have been filed in federal court. Now, the defense attorneys apparently removed it to federal court anyways. Even they don't trust the local court system to handle the case, apparently. And it's a shame because I know the Institute for Justice was interested in taking the case for free, and I'm sure they also could have hired Chris Wiest to take the case as well. But it is what it is, and hopefully they end up stumbling their way to the truth and some justice in this case. Make sure to leave a comment here. The more comments that this video gets, the more eyes that will see this video. So keep it circulating. This needs to be national news, and that is the only way that there will be accountability here, unfortunately. So if I hear anything else, I'll do an update, and you can follow along by subscribing both here and at the blog at thecivilrightslawyer.com. You can follow me on X at JohnBryanESQ. Remember, our rights don't end where your fear begins. Freedom is scary. Deal with it.